So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the 2M podcast, which is a conversation between two seasoned journalists with a combined experience of 40 years. My name is Julie Masiga, and with me is
Clay Muganda. Lonalisa, Gikunda, Jamison, Wanjohi, Wamashati, Jayden, Uhunye, Ganjawan. If you don't live in Kenya, then these names might sound odd to you. But if you're a Kenyan, then you actually know that these are the names that people use to refer to the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. The newest name, though, is Fatso. It's not even a week old, or maybe it's less than a week old. And at this moment is when we get to start asking ourselves, okay, fine, has the president put on weight? And are we really fat shaming the president? Or are we just people who like fat shaming anybody who's put on weight or anybody who we feel is bigger than us? Julie, what do you think?
Let me first say that I'm not a huge fan of the president, and I'll be the first one to call him names. But in this particular instance, I actually felt for him. Reason being that as a woman, I know what it feels like to be fat shamed. Corona has been a period where my relationship with the fridge has become very cozy. It's either my computer or the fridge. And as you can imagine, that relationship is now very visible, 10 plus kgs later. And everywhere I go, people, there's no ati hi Jules, what's up? It's just like, hey, you've gained weight or you've added weight. Like Kenyans like to say, you've added weight.
Which is grammatically wrong.
Which is grammatically wrong. But yeah, the truth is, yes, I've packed on a few pounds. And I don't like being fat shamed. I'm not saying that I don't think that I'm pretty. I just don't like people feeling that they can comment about my body and make fun of it. Or some people even go so far as to recommend trainers. Other people tell me I was not this fat even when I was pregnant. So when I saw people commenting about Uhuru's weight like that, I felt that that's unnecessary. His body weight has got nothing to do with his policies. Nobody likes the way he's running the country. Nobody fully appreciates the policies he's put in place for governance, but that's quite separate from how he looks.
So now that you mentioned policies and all that, could it that we are calling him all these names as a way of venting? We are so frustrated that actually the only way to get back at him is to call him all these very many names.
It's true, because you feel powerless. You feel powerless to speak truth to power. You feel powerless to change the way things are being run in the country that you live in. You almost feel like a squatter. Things are just done above your head, and you're here trying to like rail your fists at the government, but they're just ignoring you. So you're like, in the absence of, if my voice cannot cause a shift in the policy world, then I might as well just attack this guy personally. Make him feel bad, because even me, I'm feeling bad.
But you see, that's a thing. I mean, after he has felt bad, are things really changing? Because, okay, fine, we can say this is banter or this is a joke. Maybe we are trying to cope. But at what point do we draw the line? At what point is it banter? And at what point now is it just plain insult that actually we are out to insult the person of Uhuru Kenyatta?
That's a good point, because earlier I spoke to Henry Maina, who is the former regional director for Article 19. Right now, he's a lecturer, he's a consultant, and he also sits on the Complaints Commission at the Media Council of Kenya. And he was making that distinction between banter, between critique, and then just outright criticism, right? You're saying once you start making a personal attack, you get diminishing returns, because making everything into a meme about the president and elevating him as this pedestal of ridicule doesn't really change how things are run.
So this more or less like distracts us?
It distracts us, but still in the same vein, the space that we've managed to create as Kenyans where we have free speech is also helpful for the democracy of the nation, right? So people should be able to say what they want, including fat shaming the president, but they should be able to choose avenues that actually cause change.
Yeah, I did speak to Maina too. And there's this thing that he brought up, which I think makes a little bit of sense, because when we started saying that the president has put on weight, some people commented that he's done that because he's eating our taxes, and by that it was reference to that corruption. So Maina did have a question, and I think he asked that what will we talk about when the president loses weight?
That he has stopped eating our taxes.
Okay, so and this idea of now, when we resort to this thing about his weight, I mean his looks and stuff like that, does it take away from us the focus to discuss serious policy issues or serious things affecting us, like probably the economy and stuff like that? Is it a coping mechanism?
Initially it is, but then you ask yourself after that, if you wanted to discuss corruption and you simplified it to the measure that by him gaining weight, it is our money.
Okay.
So supposing he loses weight next month, yeah,
Okay.
what do we discuss about corruption?
Okay.
Yeah, he's lost weight.
Yeah.
What do we discuss about corruption?
We say that now he's not more corrupt because he's lost weight. Now he stopped eating our money, or
Yeah.
or probably we'll come up with another. So we are the losers here.
Yes, technically, we have the space, but we use the space. It is good to use the space for parody. It's used to use the space for entertainment, but that is a smaller aspect of an engagement with a policymaker.
Maina says that when we keep on bashing the president, it takes away our ability to discuss serious issues. So, are we really being trivial? Are we deliberately missing the bigger picture by just being trivial because now we are helpless, as you mentioned, Julie?
We are being trivial and we are being petty, but there's a place for triviality and pettiness because, as we said, we are a population that feels very downtrodden and unable to chart the way our destiny should happen. So, what you operate from the place that you're at. If all you can do is insult the president and to make you feel that you have a say in your republic, then that's all you can do. In the same vein, you can still use that same voice you have, elevate the conversation a bit, and actually hold people accountable. For example, speaking with Maina again, he said that in the beginning, when they were rolling out the COVID protocols, they would just roll them out and they would just basically say, this is what you should do without giving you a chance to participate.
Okay.
But after Kenyans discussed how the rollout was happening on Twitter and elsewhere, including a lot of insults, you see progress.
Which is that is our hallmark, you know.
That's our relief. That's how we feel that somebody said a word. It's a release,
Okay,
because
yeah.
of all this pent up tension. Anyway, progressively, you see that Uhuru himself and his government is showing that they are listening even to those mimified criticisms. Because lately he's begun to say that you people want me to open the country. I have heard you, but after advice I got from my people, these are the steps that I'm going to take. Before he would not explain himself. Now
So
he started
banter is working.
Banter works, but there's a fine line between banter within the space of free speech and outright insult to his person.
Yeah, I think this the bit about insult to his person. I think there's so many people who did not take it kindly.
Yeah.
I mean, you related to it because of what you've been going through and what actually most of the time women go through when it comes to weight. Because I don't think there are people who are fat shamed in this country as much as women are.
Right.
Yeah, women get fat shamed all the time, and I'm just trying to imagine how intense it could have been if at all that the president happened to be a woman. I think it could have been worse.
Oh, the house would have been burnt down by now.
I think there was a time that one of Uhuru's the spokesperson, I think
Kanzedena.
Kanzedena was called enough names because of she had put on weight, and the people who tried to explain all that. So, are we a nation who do we just like hurling insults? Because in other countries also, I mean, they've been presidents, vice presidents, I mean, prime ministers have been called enough names.
Barack Obama stands out as somebody who's insulted from day one.
Yeah, but Obama actually, of all American presidents, I was reading through another list, Obama had only two official nicknames. No Drama Obama and the Deporter in Chief.
No drama, Obama. Nice ring to it.
Yeah, Clinton was actually had this Slick Willie because of the affair with the Monica Lewinsky. Of course, Trump had the highest number. But even then, even as people were calling them this, and we are saying that most of the time we do this and it distracts us away from the main issues. But even these American presidents, even as people were calling them all these names, did people really forget the main issues, things that people needed to talk about?
That's one thing they did not forget. It was just part of their political discourse. Insulting the president just became another way of communicating with the president or participating in governance. I think what happens in Kenya is that there are very many microaggressions in the sense that you feel there's too much madharau. Just one day in your life, you've encountered with a cop. Maybe you've gone to a government office, you found a coat and not a person. Maybe people are cutting in traffic, people are overlapping and things are going wrong. So from morning till evening, you're feeling that you've been cut 1,000 times. And then this builds up over days, over months, over years. And then you think about the economy is not doing so well. Then you think back to 2013 where these fellows were elected while being suspects with the matter in court. And you just think that there's so much injustice in the world.
So anything.
What can I do? If I can say... What were you saying? Ganja ones, new mashati. If I can call the president a fat, so that makes me feel like some of that angst has leaked from my body. It's a way of expressing yourself to vent, which is okay. People are allowed to vent. And besides, the president, by presenting himself for presidency, is now a public figure. So he's put himself out there of his own accord.
But he's a public figure, yes. But and tweet too mean. He's a public figure, but he's a person first. I mean, don't we have that humanness? I mean, and tweet too mean. And tweet being too mean a nation, or where is this meanness culture coming from? Or
we're mean because people are
free?
Mean to us.
Are we too free?
I don't think there's such a thing as too free. We're free. We could be freer. But of course, he is a person. Basically, there are no laws that prohibit you from calling Uhuru fat.
No, there is a law probably. In 2015, no, not for calling him fat. In 2015, I think there's a student who actually got jailed, and the whole thing, the way it was reported, is that he got jailed for insulting the president.
Right. So I think even the president has moved on from 2015 because now he hasn't commented. Maybe he's in the gym.
No. He did comment another time when he said that anytime he logged onto Twitter or he logged on social media, there were just insults, and he figured like it was better to probably spend time with his significant half.
Right.
It was more fulfilling.
There was less Matusi.
So, I mean, are we being mean? Are we just a mean nation that actually we are so mean to ourselves, to the president or to the leadership, that we cannot even feel that we are not discussing the main issues?
Yes, we are mean because government is mean to us. Not to give an excuse, but just to give an explanation. What we should do in this particular instance, like I was saying, in as much as that guy was arrested for insulting the president, I don't think there's actual legislation. I don't think calling him fat is hate speech. That one is clearly legislated against. What we should do is turn this conversation back to us.
But you're saying that there's no law, but in 2015, this student was pleaded guilty on 2 counts of hate speech and abusing head of state.
Right, and that might have been under the National Cohesion and Integration Act of 2008, which outlaws discrimination and hate speech on ethnic grounds. That's how I'm saying that charge. I think relying on this particular act and these clauses in that instance was flawed.
Yeah, I think apart from just insulting the president, also there was some ethnic slur to it, to whatever this young
man. 2015.
Yeah,
okay.
there was an ethnic slur to it, and I think that's why that law that you've read probably applies.
Applied in that scenario. In this particular context that we find ourselves in, all those names that you read out at the beginning, Jaden, etc., calling the president fat, are not hate speech. There is no ethnic implication.
Yeah, on this idea of the law that you just read, at some point, I think the former Chief Justice complained also about being insulted online, and the president actually more or less took a pot shot at him over that and told him, like, we wanted to come up with a stronger law, and I think it's your courts. Maina had something to say about that.
So if you are to wrap it up, given what has happened with us fat shaming Uhuru, what is the way forward?
The way forward is that communities will define the threshold of how far people can go with such criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Body shaming is not accepted in any society, be they developed or undeveloped. So I think it is a wrong thing from my perspective that we ought to critique and criticize the president. We must hold him accountable for what we think is brazen incompetence on certain issues. And the president ought to remain open to that criticism.
Okay.
And I think he has, because the president made a joke. You remember at one point he made a joke to former CJ Maraga and told Maraga to develop a thick skin.
Yes.
So the president, to that extent, I think is open-minded to criticism. And he also makes jokes about it. And that's where we need to go. But as a country, we need to understand that there are limits, and those limits are developed by us. We can't mimic any other society. We must develop our own standards.
Okay.
So critiquing leaders is important, but we must not fall into shaming them because of their body types, because that's something sometimes you have no control about. People are made in a given way genetically. You know, there are people who are going to have big eyes. There are people who are going to be bald-headed. And it has nothing to do with them.
So basically, after listening to what Maina says, we might actually end up asking ourselves, at what point is it parody? And can we criminalize parody, or can we have somebody arrested and charged for satire or parody? Is it really, do we have such a thing in our laws?
Unfortunately, we kind of do. Because recently, remember when everybody was up in arms about the IMF loans to Kenya, and the hashtag was IMF Stop Loaning Kenya. So one activist called Edwin Mutemi Wakiama went ahead and created a poster in jest and in parody. The poster had Uhuru Kenyatta's face on it, and it was basically saying, "Do not lend to this man. He does not have the authority of the people." So Kiama was arrested and charged based on Section 22 of the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act of 2018.
I think that must be the law that at some point Uhuru told Maraga that you should not complain, and you're the one who suspended this.
Yes, it was suspended, but now it's come back into use, right? So it went through a court process. Even the Bloggers Association of Kenya petitioned its implementation, and they petitioned, but they failed. So the law is currently being used. Section 22, under which Kiama was charged, is about false publications, and yet what he did could quite is distinguishable or defined as parody. A parody is to produce a humorously exaggerated imitation. It's not. It's not within the realm of fact.
Yeah, because I was reading something which, if we can actually define parody probably as satire. I was
Yes.
reading somewhere where they say, like, satire performs a vital function in a democratic society by using humor to broach taboo subjects, especially in times of crisis. And we can actually say we are in times of crisis.
Yeah. We've been in crisis for a while. But I just want to say that the law is being, I think, in my opinion, the law is being misused, because Kiama, who was parodying Uhuru, was charged under this section, which says a person who intentionally publishes false, misleading, or fictitious data, or misinforms with intent that the data shall be considered or acted upon as authentic with or without any financial gain, commits an offense and shall, on conviction, be liable to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or both. So there's a very clear distinction between false, misleading, fictitious, and parody or satire.
It's ironical that the fine is so high, and
Yes.
actually the whole thing that he was complaining about was us being loaned
Mortgaged to China.
Okay, being mortgaged.
Right.
The whole point, what he said is that the person named above,
Do not lend him money. He does not have authority to borrow on our behalf.
I think that's what they probably called false information. Because, yeah, he has the authority.
He does, but on the face of it, it was clearly not intended to be, it was not presented as a fact. It was presented as a joke.
Yeah, I understand, because what this thing probably further explains is that satire only reminds us of the sad state of affairs. It does not create it. It can't mock what does not exist.
Exactly. And the fact is that we are living in a time when we've overborrowed, and our grandchildren and great grandchildren are going to be repaying the loans that were taken between 2013 and this very day. But even the IMF itself could not reasonably have been expected to think that that poster by Kiama was true.
Okay, IMF did react, and they gave an explanation why they would not probably give Kenya. I mean, why they will still give Kenya the money.
Yes, which means that even they discounted the poster.
Oh, yes. I mean, so we can actually say probably that this talk, because when was the last time IMF ever came and explained anything to Kenyans?
Yes, which makes a good point. That's what I was trying to say earlier, Clay. In as you can spend your time better, you can use your freedom of speech much better. Instead of calling the president fat or whatever, use it to make things happen. Use it to call out the IMF so that they have to come back and explain to you exactly what they're doing. Use it to complain, for example, about the construction of the Nairobi is that another super highway?
No, it's expressway.
Expressway.
Yeah.
At a time when we're in a public health crisis, should our priority be on fast tracking the construction of a road that only people who have 300 shillings a day are going to be able to use?
Yeah, there is. I think there is that bit also. There's that bit where we can. The takeaway from this is that we can use satire to start a public conversation, or a conversation about something of a national interest. But at the same time, there's this thing that we use it so much that we fail to discuss the main things. So here's a case where we talked, IMF came and explained to us that this is the reason why we will not stop. We will still give this money because this is how the money is going to be. But on our own, have we gone forward and probably taken our leaders to task now to explain to us on their own? What are we doing about it? Yes, we made IMF speak, but what about us?
This is what people do every day on Twitter, is ask the leadership, what are you doing and why are you doing what you're doing like that?
Do they answer?
I give the example of Uhuru's COVID communication. He
Yes.
started off by giving edicts and directives. Then shortly, he realized that, hey, people are not taking this message very well. Let me explain my thinking. Why he thought that is because somebody somewhere listened to what Kenyans were saying and told him, hey, Mr. President, there's a problem here. You need to, you need to prevent a revolution.
Do you think
Like-
probably, I mean, like if Uhuru were on Twitter, could it have been much faster? Could he be listening to us? Because he left Twitter, and he said why he left Twitter anyway. Or he
We
left
hounded
social
him off
media.
Twitter,
We hounded
yes.
him off Twitter. Do you think probably if at all he were back on Twitter, or if you were on Twitter, we could have been engaging him directly, and he could have explained to us instead of IMF?
Yes, and this is where you should use your freedoms judiciously, because those memes, like he says himself, those memes pushed him off Twitter, and he would be right there where you can engage with him.
And I agree with him. We should call them memes.
the memes menace pushed him off Twitter. But if people had been less you called it trivial, less trivial and petty about his person or whatever else, he might have remained in that space, and then to this day we would have had a chance to engage with the president directly. What has happened now is that he's getting now second-hand information, probably from the intelligence service or his cabinet or whatever, telling him what Kenyans are saying, because he's taken himself off the platform where he could hear it directly.
And that's very sad for somebody actually who his first campaign was based on how digital is, and and this social media and being social media savvy and stuff. It is so sad that it has to end that way.
Really? Because at the end of the day, we should be thinking about the bigger picture. The bigger picture is maintaining your freedoms.
But even for him to leave Twitter and because of insult and as a leader, he should have a thick skin, don't you think so? Because when I spoke to Maina, he did mention something about the president should not be somebody who gives up so easily.
Okay, once you put your foot into the waters of public service, then you should be growing a thick skin from the moment you decide to vie for office. Because now you're a public figure, and constitutionally, even people have a right to say whatever it is they want to say about you within the confines of the law. Of course, not hate speech and not based on ethnicity. So that's why I was saying that nothing stops you from calling Uhuru fat or calling him Jaden. Because and he should be able to take that punch for punch. He should be able to take it in his stride
Should
because
be
he's
rolling with the punches.
rolling with the punches. Because he's the president, and basically he just has to. Hakuna otherwise. People are going to talk. And of course, we've come a long way from that. Let's even say Moi's 90s, where you could even barely, if you even thought about an insult, then you'd be in detention. So we've come a long way. So he should have a thick skin, yes. But people should find a way to, if accountability and change and better governance is what we want, insulting the president is not going to get us there.
I think when you say we've come a long way, I mean, I totally agree with you. And now I want to take advantage of my age.
Okay, old man, go ahead and speak then.
And actually agree and say that, I mean, to understand why we are this open, it's always good to also understand our history and understand, because in the 80s and in the 90s, it was almost even criminal to think
Yes,
of insulting the president
exactly.
or saying something untoward about the president, you see. Then we come into this time of the new constitution, we have all these freedoms, and then the world also changes because we have all this social media. So I don't need to go to a radio station or a TV station to insult the president. I can do it on this unofficial channel.
You can do bad all by yourself.
I don't need somebody. Yeah, I can do that. So I think, yes, it is freedom of expression, but sometimes also it can be classified as talking carelessly.
Carelessly, tastelessly, insensitively. Is that what like that? Without
Probably you can
sensitivity.
create it, yeah.
Yeah, there is. I think on a personal level, like between me and you, for example, if you insult me and I feel really bad about it, maybe I can maybe I can go to civil court and say you defamed me or something. Between the two of us, it's a different issue. Maybe I can decide to punch you in the face, whatever. We'll sort it out at our level. The difference here being that the president is the president, he's a public figure, right? He's opened himself up to critique and criticism. Unfortunately, that includes insult. So, insofar as he should have a thick skin, like you were saying before, yes, he should. But is it the best use
Actually,
of our time?
Maina also said the same thing, yeah, that he needs to have a thick skin.
Right.
Yeah, he should have a thick skin.
But it
then-
doesn't mean it's the best use of our time to insult him. What does it change eventually?
I think because the main aim here is, what does it make us a better nation? Do we become better people? I mean, is this the whole thing that we are complaining about? Does he listen to it? I mean, do we become a better nation by calling the president names?
We don't. But at the same time, we still must protect that space wherein people can insult, yeah? But just impress upon them that, yes, you can, but what is it doing for you? How is it helping you? Honestly, really, down to for example, in this pandemic, is it going to help you get a vaccine? Because you are the first person to call the president a fatso. It's not. It's basically a waste of breath.
So how do you go about this then? Should we become better people, or should we just continue being mean?
Well, there are those who will continue. I think even Maina spoke about, what did he call it? Intellectually savvy or
No,
something?
he said that if I remember, he said that
Sophisticated.
Yeah, we're not. Sometimes it shows that we're not intellectually sophisticated.
Yes, so we need a bigger number of people with that level of intellectual sophistication to understand that they need to use their freedom of speech to better their own lives. That's what I think is the bottom line. There are those who will continue insulting the president for whatever reason, some of which might be because they feel helpless to do anything else. But ideally, if we're trying to achieve that mystical, tipping point of revolution, which I think we'll speak about next week, we need to be more judicious in how we use our voices.
The circle of revolution. Yeah,
Yes.
that one needs its own podcast. Miss
It does
Masilia.
need its own podcast.
Yeah, a whole maybe We'll talk to our producers and see if we can have maybe 6 hours to talk about the revolution.
You're on your own. 6 hours ni wewe na watu wako Clay, hapana. Nope.
So the takeaway from this is we should use this space judiciously.
Yes. Because people have fought so hard for the freedoms that we're enjoying right now. So hard. Some people have even lost their lives. The least you could do is be responsible about how you manifest your freedom to do things. And this is a very clear case. You've been given freedom of speech to call the president all manner of names. So try and make sure that even as you're calling a name or you're critiquing or criticizing, that at the end of it, even if it's going to be your children or your children's children, you'll have shifted the landscape towards a better Kenya.
And we should stop fat shaming women.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen.
Okay, and that's a good place to end. This is the 2M podcast.
I'm Julie Masiga.
And I'm Clay Muganda.
Until next week.
Revolution!